I think it's safe to say that we've all heard about Apollo 11, the American space mission that successfully landed the first man on the moon. But did you know about the brain behind the onboard software that helped save the astronauts' lives when several computer alarms were triggered just minutes before landing? That brain belongs to Margaret Hamilton, the world's very first software engineer and an overall badass. And this is her side of history. Margaret was born on August 17, 1936, in Paoli, Indiana. Her family moved to Michigan, where she graduated from Hancock High School and later studied mathematics at the University of Michigan. Margaret later transferred to Earlham College, where she continued her studies and earned a BA in mathematics, as well as a minor in philosophy. It was Margaret's father, a philosopher and a poet, and her grandfather who inspired her to include philosophy in her studies. She credits the head of the math department at Earlham, Florence Long, for helping her with her desire to pursue abstract mathematics and become a mathematics professor. Margaret met her first husband while studying at Earlham, chemistry major James Cox Hamilton. The couple moved to Boston, Massachusetts, and they later had a daughter named Lauren in 1959, before they eventually divorced. In the summer of 1959, Margaret began working for Edward Norton Lawrence at MIT's meteorology department. There, she developed software that could predict the weather, as well as contributing to Lawrence's chaos theory work. She calls Lawrence's love for software experimentation contagious, and that she caught the bug during the time she worked for him. Between the years 1961 and 63, Hamilton worked on the Semi-Automatic Ground Environment Project, SAGE for short, at MIT. She was one of the programmers who wrote the software for the prototype used by the US Air Force to search for possibly unfriendly aircraft. She also wrote software for a satellite tracking project at the Air Force Cambridge Research Laboratories. It was used by the military during the Cold War. About this program, Hamilton said, "What they used to do when you came into this organization as a beginner was design you this program which nobody was ever able to figure out or get to run. The person who wrote it took delight in the fact that all of his comments were in Greek and Latin. So I was assigned this program, and I actually got it to work. I even printed out its answers in Latin and Greek. I was the first one to get it to work." It was her efforts at the SAGE project that made her a candidate for the position at NASA as the lead developer for the Apollo flight software. At Charles Stark Draper Laboratory at MIT, Hamilton and her team were responsible for developing the in-flight software, as well as the system software, including the error detection and recovery software. Her team was credited with developing the software for Apollo and Skylab. Hamilton's work and being a mother would sometimes collide, especially when she worked in the evenings or weekends, and she'd bring her daughter Lauren to work with her. It was during one of these instances, while Hamilton was doing a simulation of the moon landing. Lauren played astronaut and started pressing buttons at random. Lauren's button pressing caused the simulation to both start and, with a few more buttons, crash, as she had accidentally started a program which was supposed to run prior to launch instead of after, as it did in this case. Because of the limited space on the computer, the navigation data which would take them to the moon was wiped. Hamilton realized that this could cause problems if it was to happen on an actual mission, but when she suggested a program change, the higher-ups at NASA claimed that the astronauts would be too well trained to make the same mistake as Hamilton's little girl did. However, on the very next mission, Apollo 8, that is exactly what happened. After that, the people at NASA and MIT allowed Hamilton to put the code in, which would prevent such a thing from happening again. Although it is the astronauts that get the most credit for landing on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission, they couldn't have done it without Margaret Hamilton. With just 3 minutes left until a lunar lander would land on the moon's surface, several computer alarms were triggered. Hamilton's priority alarm displays interrupted the astronauts' normal displays to warn them that there was an emergency. Essentially, the software was smart enough to realize that it was being overloaded with more tasks than it could handle, and that it only needed to focus on what was the most important. Hamilton was nominated for a NASA Space Act Award by Paul Curto, a senior technologist who also called her work the foundation for ultra-reliable software design. In 2016, Margaret Hamilton was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States, by former US President Barack Obama, who said, "Our astronauts didn't have much time, but thankfully they had Margaret Hamilton." Margaret Hamilton was also the one to invent the term software engineering. She started using the term during the earlier Apollo missions, and for a long time it was nothing but an ongoing joke, as it was previously unheard of. Software engineering wasn't taken as seriously as other forms of engineering, and not regarded as actual science. Hamilton's innovations go beyond the feats of playing an important role in getting humans to the moon, and she's opened the door for many women to enter fields like software engineering. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to learn more about her side of history.